Robert Mueller, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nick. Glad to be here.
So you're currently the president of RIM Logistics. Tell me about RIM Logistics.
Yeah, I'm excited to do that. We are a global freight forwarder, privately owned, 28 years in business. We are headquartered out of Chicago. Just moved into a new building about 7 months ago. Very excited about that. Two owners from the beginning, two families that own the business, never gone outside for any other funding and having a lot of fun. Love it.
So tell me, how did the business get started?
Was actually my dad. It was 1997, and my father and his business partner, Sheila Seraphin, they founded RIM Logistics, started the company, and 28 years later, Sheila is still with the company, playing a principal role with us. However, my father sadly passed away a couple of years ago, and that we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, throughout this podcast.
What was the idea that they had for starting the business? Had they come from a background in logistics?
Oh, for sure. So, my father grew up with this business. I mean, we're three, four generations of being in supply chain in one capacity or another. My father's father, my grandfather, was a truck driver, a teamster out of Wisconsin. And at the earliest of days, my dad was brought into the company where he worked to help sweep the floor and help wash trucks and do various things. And so he was exposed to the trucking business at a very young age and earned his way up. In fact, so much so that in the 70s, we relocated as a family from Wisconsin to England, where he took a giant leap in his career and changed really the trajectory of our family fortunes, if you will, and, where we were going from there. So coming back to Chicago through other steps along the way, in the 1997, my dad was working with Sheila. They were at an industry competitor that was a very large American company. And at that time, if you remember, 1997, the U.S. was trade surplus. Everyone was getting jobs. It was a great time. I believe we were the only superpower in the world. It was the start of the transition to China. That was when it was popular. The Walmarts of the world started that transition. And Dad said, look, I think we can start a business on something that other people don't have time for. The small businesses were not important. They were getting overlooked. There was just too easy of money out there with bigger clients. And they decided to start a business based on small to medium-sized exporters and importers out of Illinois. 1997, today in 2025, we're almost a $500 million company. No mergers, acquisitions, all organic. So the idea was a sound one. It worked.
So forgive me, I'm just trying to put a couple of the pieces together and just making an assumption that it sounds like your father decided to start this when he was a little bit later in his career stage.
It's funny you say that, because when Dad started the business, we were my brother and I had graduated from college. We both were out in the workforce, and we were both living in the city of Chicago. It was our family tradition where we would come home on Sunday nights and try to have a meal together as a family. And Dad called us home, said, hey, make sure you guys, this is one you can't miss. No girlfriends, no anything like that. Make sure you come to dinner. And so we showed up, and Dad said, look, Mom supports me 100%. I am going to start this business with my partner, Sheila, and I've got to know if I can do this. And, he was, you boys, your school's paid for. You're out in the workforce yourselves. I got time to make it back if I lose everything, but I just got to know if we can do it. My brother thought Dad was old as the hills, old as dirt. We tried to talk him out of it. Today, I am 54 years old and sprightly. My father, when he started RIM Logistics, was 46 years old. It just puts things in perspective. I mean, is that old? Was that young? I think at 46, it wasn't old, but it wasn't young either. And but he knew that our college was paid for his kids. We were out of the house, and we were on our own journeys, and he could take that chance with Mom. And if they lost everything, they were content to go back to the humble beginnings, how they started their marriage. And they really were. They weren't people who needed a lot. They knew how to grind it out. My parents were parents at 19 and 18, and they were high school sweethearts. So, they came from very simple, humble beginnings. So they were willing to take that risk.
Well, what an amazing achievement, right? You don't hear many people taking that risk at that stage of life.
No, you don't. But they were definitely willing to do it. And the great thing was, we'll probably stumble onto this topic throughout this conversation because my brother and I didn't have our own plans in college, didn't know what professions we wanted to be in, weren't really dedicated to any one direction or another. We both fell into logistics. And there was a time in the mid '90s where we were actually all working for the three biggest American freight forwarders at the time, and they were all three buildings in a row. And there was no strategy in that per se. It was just, RIM didn't exist. It wasn't out there, and we all had an opportunity to get into the field, and it really played well throughout the trajectory of RIM.
And you had several stints overseas, it looks like.
I did. So, that was probably the biggest thing, as I was getting through university and wrapping up, my dad said to me, he was always great with have a plan. And he said, "What is your plan?" I said, "Oh, well, I don't have, I'm going to go live in Chicago and go to Cubs games with my friends. We're going to have a great time and life will come together as it normally does." And we'd beat up on the St. Louis Cardinals every chance we got, right?
They try.
Say that for your benefit, Nick.
Yeah. Right.
But with that in mind, he gave me some great advice. I've said this 1,000 times. I'll say it 10,000 more. And he only had the best interest for his kids. He said, "Look, Rob, you're graduating from a mid-level university. There's a million kids coming into Chicago that have thought about what they want to do and have a plan and have worked hard and built a body of work and a resume that's going to put you in a difficult spot to get yourself noticed. I've got an idea and a plan that'll put you to the front of the pack." And I said, "All right, Dad, I'm willing to take a gamble. What's your advice?" He said, "Well, you got to do what I did. I went to England at the age of 26, 27 when he went, and took my family there. And when I came back, I separated myself from the pack. You start over there to work overseas for a year or two. And when you come back, you won't be competing against the people from Big Ten schools and Ivy League schools. You'll be competing against yourself because you'll be the only one with true international experience. And if you want to be in logistics, that is going to put you at the head of the pack." That was a pivotal moment for me. And it really led to really everything that's happened because I didn't have a plan. I didn't know who I wanted to be. I just had a general curiosity of the world and wanted to learn from other people and cultures, experience different things. And that created an opportunity, an avenue for me that I don't think was available to many people.
Tell me more about that because you mentioned it both for your father and yourself. Doing this stint in England really changed both of your careers. So tell me more, like why was that so significant?
Well, it just gives you perspective, right? I mean, we all are products of our environment, and it's easy to stay safe. It's easy to stay familiar. There's a million reasons why most people do it, right? But when you take yourself out of your comfort zone, you put yourself out there, you take risks, you make yourself vulnerable, you create opportunities that on many levels just create so many different things, right? It broadens you as a person, it thickens your skin, it gives you new perspectives. And so Dad, having grown up son of a truck driver in Wisconsin, when he went to England, he learned something, and this is the '70s. There's no internet, there's no cell phones, there's no any of this stuff. I mean, it was really back when the world was a different world. And it changed everything about him. And he came back to the States and excited about, and he was working in oil and gas and spending a lot of time in Africa 50 years ago. So it was just eye-opening to him what the world could look like and be like. And those experiences shaped me to a degree. So when he said, "Why don't you do this?" I was on board with that. The difference was when I went over to England in the '90s, I was single. I had, I was at a different point in my life. And because I wasn't married with kids. And so with that in mind, I was working in Birmingham, England, which was not London. It was a very different situation. And it was a small office of only 8 people or so. So I didn't get to the social network. I didn't have the friend network that I would have liked. With that in mind, I was always pushing to come back to the US. What am I missing? What are my friends doing that I'm not doing? What is my girlfriend doing that I'm not part of? What are all these things that are happening that I'm missing out on? And when I came back to the US, I realized not much had changed. Sure, I've missed a few games and missed a few events, but really everyone was talking about the same things, doing the same things, had the same aspirations. I was the only one who had really done anything very different. That then gave me the confidence and the realization that, okay, I need to do this again, because going from being the only guy who was different in England, in my office and in the company I worked for, to now going back to the US and working for UPS, where I was number 20,221, whatever that was. I just immediately lined up and said, "Hey, send me overseas again. I'll go anywhere." Well, actually, I said, "I want to go to England. I want to go to Europe. Please send me back." And I just was lucky. It was the timing that Asia became, what it was. And they said, "Well, we have no use for a young man like yourself back in England, but how would you like to go to Asia?" And that really was what created the opportunities for me, much less, any specific plan or aspiration to be a leader of any kind. It was just get out there and experience the world and pick up skill sets and build relationships that put me in a position that maybe other people wouldn't have.
And I think you spent time in Hong Kong. Is that where you ended up?
I did. I did. I spent time predominantly in Hong Kong. I lived there almost 8 years. Became a permanent resident along the way while I was over there. Got married, had 2 kids. My wife is, in fact, my college sweetheart. So she ended up coming over to Hong Kong and joined me. And we had our first 2 of 3 children while we lived there. So it was definitely the better part of a decade, there was a short stint there in Chicago. But between England and then back in Asia, it was over a decade of living overseas and creating my own view of what I thought, the world looked like and the opportunities.
I've spent a lot of time in Asia for work also. I didn't live there, but I always enjoyed going to Hong Kong. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. It was unbelievable. I think it's the best city in the world. The thing about life as you get older is, and as you experience more things, you romanticize periods of time. So I loved Hong Kong in the 90s, the handover from the British to the Chinese. The Chinese, after 50 years of being really not open to the world, and all of a sudden opening up in 92 and then joining the WTO in 2000, 2001. And it was the wild, wild west over there. It was such an exciting time. And anybody who really wanted to work hard and get after it, it was a great time. It was exciting. I don't know that there will be another opportunity like that anywhere in the world in my lifetime. And I don't know if there will be one again. It was awesome. And so I romanticize that period of time because I remember who I was at that age and how my world was being shaped and my vision of the world. Today I'm a lot older. I don't want to be in an exciting, dynamic place that's one of the most dense cities in the world with a million things coming at you every 2 seconds. I'm at a different phase. I'm happy to slow down and enjoy life a little bit more in a more quiet setting. So did I love it? Yes. Would I want to go back tomorrow? No. That Hong Kong's gone. That version of Rob Mueller is gone, and they're in the history books now.
So tell me about the industry, how it works and the different layers to it and where your company fits in.
So Rim Logistics is predominantly a global freight forwarder. So the biggest product we have, the largest thing, is ocean shipments. We manage ocean shipments for companies around the world. They could be moving from China to Australia. Typically, the U.S. is a touch point, either at the front or back end of a transaction. But we have 4 offices in Germany. We're in England. We're in Hong Kong. We're in Canada. We're in Belgium. And of course, in the States, huge amount of business with Mexico and Canada. And whether it's ocean or it's air freight or it's rail or it's parcel or anything that moves trucks, anything that moves something from point A to point B, Rim Logistics has the ability to service that through tracking tools, visibility tools, and otherwise. And we have large warehouses in the States and in Hong Kong where we're able to distribute goods from B2C, B2B, and be there for, whether it's consumer goods or it's the largest industrial companies, we have the ability to do it all.
And how does it work? Do you own the containers that your customers are using?
No. So, our industry in general, RIM is a non-asset based company. So we don't own trucks. We don't own anything like airplanes or ships or anything like that. And really, while there are a lot of asset owning companies that are in trucks, and you do have some asset owning companies with airplanes along the lines of the FedExes, the UPSs, the Amazons, Most companies don't own airplanes or ocean ships, ocean, and with that, ocean containers. So we all rent space, if you will. We're all travel agents for ocean or for air freight. And we use our scale and we use our relationships to negotiate frequency, volume, price points, dependability. And that's really the core of our business. And then, of course, if you take that a step further, not everybody has enough freight to fill a truck or to fill an ocean container or, an air freight container or pallet on a regular basis. So then you have your less than container loads, less than truckloads, and we have the ability to consolidate those shipments as well. Most importantly, in 2025, we're a customs broker. And with the tariffs and with the changes in the world, that's been probably the most stressful. Every year comes with its own challenges. A couple of years ago, it was the Suez Canal shutting down and the Red Sea not being available for ocean shipping. That took us back 200 years of ocean shipping with the inability to go through the Suez Canal and use the Mediterranean Sea. This year it was import. It was customs clearance and the tariffs and the ability to pivot quickly and entertain whatever situation the U.S. customer was facing with something that they were bringing in that was $3,000 landed cost. They knew how to sell it to the public. They knew what their cost was. They knew what their revenue was going to be. It was a science that they had worked out. All of a sudden, almost overnight, something that was $3,000 was now $100,000 or $10,000. It blew up all the price points, and people had to pivot quickly and source from new countries and bring in product in different ways. And as a global freight forwarder and a customs broker, the number one value proposition we could offer anybody was, how do we become an extension of your business? How do we help you through this pivotal time? And how do we have a valuable seat at the table to help you in your business, not just be a transactional vendor that doesn't take any ownership? And I think I'm proud to say that is one of the strongest areas for RIM Logistics. We do operate as an extension. We don't have the volume and the scale to take on the biggest players in the world on every lane in every area. There's not going to be a day where there's a RIM in every city in the world. We don't want to be, but what we do want to do is be a very valuable resource for the companies we do work with, and make sure that they can trust us and we can help them grow their businesses. And that's who we are, and that's our place in the supply chain.
Do you see a lot of private equity consolidation in your industry?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. An absolute ton of it. And if I was to say to you that private equity calls RIM Logistics every week, I would be telling you the truth. And if I told you that there are companies constantly trying to get RIM to the table, I'd be telling you a very true statement. There is a lot of money out there. A lot of private equity has been sitting for the last year or so, and they want to make deals for sure, whether it's RIM or otherwise. And the consolidation is huge. Now, for RIM, there's a lot of reasons why that isn't attractive to us at this time. And one of the main things is private equity is great. If you want to grow for the sake of growth and you want to manage your business on your EBITDA and solely look at how you want to, I don't want to take anything away from it, because private equity is great and there is a lot of value in private equity. But for RIM at this time, who we are, we don't want to all of a sudden put flags all over the world. We're not looking to grow for the sake of growth. We're looking to grow with companies that we can be of value to and grow with them. And that's worked for us. It's taken us from $0 to $500 million. And private equity is not, I'm trying to choose my words carefully. It changes the culture of a company. And I know it's cliche to say this, and a lot of people would say this, but I would challenge anyone to get on social media, look at RIM Logistics, see who we are. And culture is everything for us. And we don't want to change that. So staying in our swim lane and making sure we're the best company we can be for our employees, our customers, and our vendors is our aspiration at this time.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. And I've played on both sides, family business and also private equity owned business. And it changes the focus, as you've described, to less about culture. And it really just becomes about next quarter's numbers, even though it's private, it's not public markets, but it's still about next quarter's numbers. And you just have to, if you go that way, you just have to be aware of the game that you're playing, because it's a different one.
And it's just got to, you just have, it's got to be something that everyone understands. It's going to change the company culture. And if that works for the company and everybody, great. I believe that a lot of the customers that are loyal to RIM and have been loyal to RIM for a long time enjoy the culture that we have. Doesn't mean that they wouldn't enjoy us if we had private equity behind us and that we couldn't do a great job for them. Of course we could, and we would adjust. I don't know if 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, RIM isn't owned by private equity. You just never know what the future holds. But before we would ever consider such a situation, we'd have to know how that impacts our employees, our customers, and our vendors, and that it was really the right move for our organization.
So you've mentioned culture now a handful of times and how important it is to you. Tell me more about your culture. How do you describe it?
Oof. Yeah, if our culture is an inclusive one. So everybody, we've tried from the earliest of times, we've tried to keep it a flat organizational structure where we have minimal mid-management roles. If somebody needs to make a decision, we want to make it quickly. We want to make it with authority, and we want to have the resources and the eyeballs on it to make sure it can be successful. At least for me, in my experience, making decisions to allow people to do things without dedicated resources, without a budget associated, without accountability is just a recipe for disaster and won't work. So that would be a key point of our culture is do it with intent, do it quickly, make sure you got the resources, and then be accountable to it. Our people, we have a hybrid culture, that works. It's really more about, we don't care what time. I can't say that because we have to be available for our customers and our customers' needs. We're flexible about when our people start and do their jobs. We want to give them that work-life balance. That said, this is a tough market and it's a tough business, and we have to be available and accountable to our customers where and when they need us. So flexibility and prioritizing is important, and we have to be able to do that for our team members. We also count on the team members to be there when the customers need them to be, and for us to be if you don't answer your phone and you don't answer what they need, they're just going to go to your competitor. And if the competitor is willing to do that, they're not going to come back to you. So don't put yourself in that position. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. When they need something, we've got to deliver, and we got to be the first ones calling them back. And if our competitors aren't doing that, we've got to make sure we're answering the calls when the customers call for them because they're not doing it, right? So it's really, if I need something, that's in the day and age we're in, Nick, it's really I want it now and I don't want to wait. That's what people expect. So whether it's Christmas presents or a technology or it's anything really, even so much as getting your car fixed. I mean, nobody has patience for anything anymore. So can you imagine if we didn't answer the phone call when an urgent shipment was taking place? Yeah, no, we'll get back to you in a couple of days. Our people are busy, and we want to make sure they have a great work-life balance. How do you navigate that and make sure that we are doing that for our people and we have the coverage, but that the customer doesn't suffer? And I think we do that. I hope I'm answering your question. I think we do that better than most.
Well, I really like how you describe that being responsive to the customer is, I try to emphasize the same type of activity here. My company's an IT service company. It's a service business, and being responsive at the moment the customer contacts you is the most important thing. I talk about it, probably not enough, but I feel like I talk about it all the time.
It's very important. It's being when you think about leadership, I find that you have to be consistently in front, making sure the team knows you got their back, making sure they know what's important, and over communicating whatever is most important to the business. And saying it once or saying it twice or saying it 10 times is never enough. It's got to be habitual. It's got to be ritual. It's got to be something that you live with every day. I would say that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned in the last 25 years throughout my own trajectory and journey is, making sure that I can't take for granted that just because I put something on a piece of paper and said it one time in front of a group of people or once a year or once a quarter, that somehow that's going to be something that is a ritual in the company. It's something I have to live and breathe and promote every day. And then it cascades through the ranks and it becomes habitual and ritual and everybody does it. So it's important. You know that.
So the part of the culture that you described, this flexibility and work-life balance, was that there from the beginning when your father started it, or more evolved as you took over?
Well, I would say dad has started a culture that was unique and wonderful. And I'd like to believe that the employees of Rim Logistics, certainly those that have been with us for 10 plus years, they know Bob Mueller was the ultimate Pied Piper. He would, lead the people down the street and be the first to do everything, the first to jump over the barricade, whatever it was whatever we had to tackle to get where we wanted to go. He drove that absolutely. And the culture we have today stems from the earliest days of Rim Logistics. Now, people have changed, culture has changed, our consumer buying habits have changed. The way that we run businesses has changed since 1997. So ultimately, the way we're doing things today is different, but I want to believe that it stems from the same core values, right? So he could do things in a different way pre-COVID, and certainly, going back 20, 25 years ago, than we can do today. We've had to adjust, we've had to pivot, and the world is not the same place, but it stems from the same core values for sure, Nick.
Tell me the part of your story of joining the family business.
That's a fun one. The year's 2001. I work in Asia. I've been over there now at this point. I've been in Asia for, 3 years, and been in the workforce for about 10. And with that in mind, my dad is Rim's growing. 1997 to 2001, Rim's grown a lot. So I'm pigeonholed. I'm having a great career. I'm with UPS. I've worked for them in England. I've worked for them in the States. I've worked for them in Hong Kong. They've been nothing but awesome to me in my career. It's been, it's a great time. I'm in the US, but now the US economy has changed. The tech bubble burst. 9/11, it hadn't taken place yet, so that wasn't a factor, but the tech bubble had burst. And so with that in mind, the US was not in the same place it had been a few years back. And UPS was really pushing for sales. That's the easy, quick way to do it. So they sent me on this 3-week business trip to the US where I was going to start in LA and San Diego and work my way diagonally through the United States and back to Asia in a 3-week period. And I think I was hitting 11 to 14 cities in that time. And the idea was that I was going to come over here as a representative of Asia and get everyone excited about doing business. But because business had dropped off so much for UPS in Asia. And I was just beat up. I was taking a lot of punches. I was halfway through a trip where, people weren't in a good place. The UPS employees weren't happy with the economy and what was happening. It had nothing to do with the company. I don't certainly want to say that. It was with the business opportunities. And I was feeling beat up and in a tough place because everyone in the US understood what was happening in our economy. Asia didn't really want to hear about it. They just wanted business to keep growing. I got to Chicago and I just said, Dad, I'm beat up. I don't know if I can keep doing this. I'm going to probably look to change. I don't want to leave Hong Kong, but I think I'm going to change. I'm going to look at one of our major competitors and look for a career. The other thing is I had been pigeonholed at that point. While I was growing fast and the trajectory was awesome, I was pigeonholed into a certain track in the UPS world because there was such a great company with so many great people. I wasn't going to really color outside the lines of the roles that they saw me in and that they spent money training me on. Dad had an awesome pitch. He said, look, you know what? Here's the worst thing that can happen. Join RIM. You go back to Hong Kong. You negotiate our ocean contracts. You negotiate with the warehouses. You negotiate the terms and conditions, the prices. And if it doesn't work out in a year or two, you've got skill sets you're never going to be exposed to at this point in your career with UPS. And you can join us and you can take that to, if it doesn't work out, you've still got a whole new set of skill sets. And I've been oversimplifying this in case I ever get misquoted by anybody. I worked for a company called Fritz Companies, which was purchased by UPS. So I never, for a short time only, I worked for UPS. That whole trajectory that I was on was with Fritz Companies, but that became the foundation of UPS supply chain and their overseas network. And that was taking place at that time. So I just want to make sure I'm very clear on that.
Rob, that sounds like an incredibly generous offer from your father. And, I can speak from experience in family business and a lot of other, second and third generation family business folks that I know. they usually do not get such a nice offer to join the family business. It's usually not like that.
No, it's not. But let me tell you, and it was, and I'll never, I would do my own journey. I would do over again tomorrow. But I will tell you this, you at one point, Nick, you asked me about, did I aspire to be a leader and how did I become a leader? The, this is the pivotal moment. Up until this point, there were always people to protect me. There was always somebody higher on the food chain that would take the hard punch, would deal with the hard conversation, the hard customer. I was still relatively young in my career at this point, right? And now all of a sudden I took this job. There was no one else. I was negotiating with business owners in foreign lands, could have been Thailand, could have been Vietnam, could have been Taiwan, China, whatever it was, Korea. And I'm facing business owners as the representative of Rim Logistics, negotiating lines of credit, contracts, and whatnot. And I had to get thick skin fast. I had to grow up quickly. And I realized while I was being exposed to amazing things through the great company that I had been with the last 10 years, I was never on the firing line. I wasn't taking the punches personally. And so now all of a sudden, I was learning, I was really drinking from the fire hose. And that changed everything for me. I mean, I learned a lot about myself. I started to believe in myself in new ways, had a confidence and skill sets that other people may not have had just because they hadn't had the opportunity or been exposed to it. So when I moved back to the US, I did want those roles because I didn't think anybody else had the experiences or the relationships and hadn't dealt with the punches that I had at that point. And that's really where that trajectory changed. That's where I go back to that safety zone. If you stay in the same space and you live and you color within the same, parameters of whatever your comfort zone is, and all of a sudden someone else comes in who's been able to color outside the lines for a long time. It's tough to compete, right? And that's what creates those opportunities. Differentiate yourself, put yourself out there, and continue and be a forever learner. Never stop learning, whoever you are.
I think that's incredible advice and insight, actually. So, do you have children that are in the business?
No, my kids are too young. So they're not young, but they're not. So I have two in university and I have one in high school. And at this point, the older two look to be getting into different fields, different industries. And the youngest still hasn't decided. I mean, she's still in high school and will be going away next year, but hasn't decided what she's going to do with the rest of her life. I can't blame her. I certainly didn't know at that point. But is it possible my kids will be in the industry? Yeah, of course, there's a possibility. And I would be proud if they did, and I would be proud if they didn't. There's no expectation of it. The only thing I would say is if they do get into the family business, my expectations would be high. It would absolutely be high. And I want the best version of them, whatever it is. And if I expect that whatever they do to give that best effort, whoever they are, whatever makes them happy, but give the best version of yourself in whatever you do.
Rob, you've shared some really great insights to your business and how you personally perform as a leader. I really appreciate you sharing that. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you'd like to offer kind of in summary?
No, I think this is a difficult time, right? We're coming into an era where whether it's the US's position in the world or it's what AI may or may not do, the tech bubble around the Mag 7, and obviously, how it's propping up our economy. There's a lot of things that are happening that are going to impact the younger generation, mortgages, the ability to buy homes, interest rates, kids coming out of college, people in the first 10 years of their career. They've got a very difficult course to navigate, I would say, for the next few years. And my advice and my expectation of my own team would be have a plan. It's not enough anymore to just sit around and hope things will come together. It really isn't. You have to be intentional about what you want. You have to communicate. You have to self-advocate. Always be respectful. Always be respectful. Be prepared to be criticized and to have the ability to take criticism with with not just, you got to have grit and you've got to be respectful of other people. And so I think these guys are coming into a tough time. And if you can help the younger generation these next few years. I think you should. There's a lot of skill sets that are being lost as the baby boomers retire and as this generation retires. People had to be problem solvers. They had to figure out how to do things. They couldn't rely on tech. I mean, if you go back to the people who cut their teeth in the 60s, 70s, 80s, they just have skill sets that I'm scared, at least for our industry, scared's the wrong word, but I don't want to lose. So I'm being very intentional about asking and making sure that we get those skill sets transferred to the younger generation. It's not enough to just know how to do tech. It's not enough to just be able to fly through podcasts. And you still have to be able to roll up your sleeves and get things done for people. So that would be my advice, Nick. Have a plan, never stop learning, seek out mentors and coaches, be prepared to be criticized, get some grit, and understand you're coming into a difficult, or a 10-year period that because of AI or otherwise, those people that are younger or newer or lower on the food chain are really going to have to differentiate themselves.
Well, Robert, I think that's, again, very good advice and insight. I'm going to make my kids listen to that and be thinking about their plan.
All right. Well, thank you, Nick. Thanks for the opportunity. Rim Logistics is, I'm incredibly proud of this company, incredibly proud of all the people that work here, and, appreciate anyone's support out there that if you ever want to look up Rim or anything about us, please reach out.
That's awesome, Rob. Really appreciate your time.
Take care.